Hi and hello watch fans, and welcome to another edition of The Real Time Show with me, your friendly neighbourhood watchmaker Rob Nuds, and my co-host calling in all the way from Amsterdam, Alon Ben Joseph. Today marks a very special occasion for The Real Time Show because this is our first ever product review show. Now, Ralph Lauren, of all brands, have been kind enough to lend us the new Polo Ralph Lauren Vintage 67, and I've been wearing it for the last couple of weeks and getting very well acquainted with it. We put a picture out on our Instagram channel, a few pictures actually, and we asked you, our listeners, to ask us questions about this watch, and we hope that this is a format that we can replicate in the future whenever brands are kind enough to loan us watches for review. Good morning, Alon. How are you?
Good morning, buddy. Good to hear you.
What an intro.
Good to hear your lovely voice. I've gotten a lot of feedback on the picture I've posted on my Instagram feed with your lovely hairy wrist and hairy jumper. For our American listeners, a jumper is a sweater.
It's actually a coat. It's a Levi's
It was
jacket.
a coat.
Yeah,
Okay.
yeah. I've gone full fluffy for the season, you know?
Yeah, very fluffy. So
Very fluffy.
I wanted to call you a name, but I won't.
This isn't a callback to the old Piaget fluffer watch, is it?
No.
Oh, okay. Thank God for that.
Let's continue on quickly. So the thing is, I've in my journey on social media posting wrist shots, I've gotten a lot of feedback on the hairy part of it. So it was funny actually to start off my post with that. All kidding aside, I've received actually cool feedback, cool questions. I did a poll on my stories, which oddly enough, it yielded almost 50-50. It was a bit skewed to no, but that was actually interesting to see. It sparked a lot of feedback. So shall we just get going?
Yeah, you know, it's an interesting watch from a brand that, as a watchmaker, is maybe still a little bit under the radar, despite having quite a long history of making watches. Now, I'm going to dive into the, not mailbag, this time comments section. I'm going to pick up a question from Gerard, G2, everybody's favourite father figure at Fratello. And
mine
says,
too, and mine too.
I mean, he's our hero. He's
Yes, he is.
Balazs's dad. Yeah, less said about that, the better. But he was rather, let's say, derisive. And with a career and collection like G's, you can say whatever the hell you want, whenever you want, and be listened to and respected. So let's respect his question, as sarcastic as it was when he asked it. He said, "What's the brand again? ... question mark." And what he meant by that, of course, was, why on earth are you posting a Polo Ralph Lauren watch? And I have to say, until I encountered this watch, which I did in Geneva in September, I would probably have had the same reaction. Now, G2 is well aware of the history of Ralph Lauren in watchmaking. He knows, of course, that for a while they were best known for their, I think it was Cartier-powered chronographs that they had. Cartier-made chronograph movements inside these quite attractive wooden bezeled watches, which retailed for around 10K for the most part. And then more recently, they've branched out into, I would say, very preppy entry-level watches, sports watches, dive watches, very simple fare, really easy to make cases, you know, derivative styles with the Polo Ralph Lauren logos plastered all over them and sold in-store in the guise of an accessory that an Ivy League chap might pick up as he's suiting himself out with a bunch of new polo shirts and weekend bags and whatnot. However, the Polo Ralph Lauren Vintage 67 is a step in a very new direction. It strikes a tantalizing middle ground for the brand and not something I expected. I had a full slate of meetings at Geneva Watch Days this year. I was there with Fratello, of course, and as I reached the end of the week, I had an evening free to myself, and I was contacted by a PR agent who I've known for many years, Chloe Bisset of 289 Consultancy in Switzerland, and she said, "I've got the head of product development from Ralph Lauren here in Geneva, and he would like to meet with you and show you some new watches." And I said, "Well, sure, you know, I've got nothing on, so let's meet in," I think we met in the bar of the Beau Rivage. And Guillaume Tetu sat down across from me, humble as you like, pulls out a nice box of watches, and he takes out all of these pieces. Now, the majority of the stuff he was showing me was either the old chronographs at the 10K price point or the entry-level Ivy League stuff. Neither one really struck a chord with me. And then he pulled out this curious little watch, which is on a, I'd say, tan brown leather bund strap of all things, with a very odd case, which we'll get to in a moment. Odd because it doesn't look like a standard style of finishing, and that's because it isn't. And he hands it across the table to me, and I was charmed by it aesthetically. But it was only then when I turned it over and I realized that it was powered by a rather attractive mechanical hand-wound movement, which, as it transpires, has a 90-hour power reserve, that I was really awed by it. And I tried it on the wrist, and I was immediately transported back to the early days of the Ralph Lauren brand, and I could see myself sitting by a fire in Aspen, having had a whole day of unimpressively skiing down those beautiful slopes and sipping on a hot chocolate, wearing this watch against a chunky cable knit sweater, and I was there. I was in a different world. And I thought, you know what, this is amazing. I actually think I might have to buy one of these little buggers. But I was convinced it would be about 5 or 6K because of where the price points had stood before. I thought this must be somewhere in the middle. But it's actually around 2,400 euros. And I was thinking, okay, this is a pretty simple Le Juperé movement. It's very nicely finished, has a 90-hour power reserve. Still not like leading horology, but very good, very solid, better than you'd expect from a Ralph Lauren watch, to be quite frank. But it has that name power, and on top of that, it has a really unique look to it because of the way the case is made. And so, in response, or shall I say, in defense of my decision to ask Ralph Lauren to send me one of these on loan, and to G2, I would say the brand is Polo Ralph Lauren, and they really need to be paid attention to.
Off the bat, yay or nay for Rob?
Yay or nay for Rob?
Yes. And I want one before you, when you got the watch in your hand, were you skewed to yes or no?
Okay.
And after wearing it for, I don't know how many days you had it on your wrist, is it a yes or no?
Before I got the watch in hand, the answer was no. Absolutely no. No way would I spend any amount of money on a Ralph Lauren watch. That is my God's honest truth. It didn't take a day or 2 days or a week for me to fall for this watch. It took a matter of seconds. As soon as Graham put it in my hands, I was falling in love. And by the end of that meeting, and the meeting was only an hour long maybe, I was convinced I was going to buy one. So it's an absolute yay. And, you know, this is not a sponsored episode in any way. This is just me wanting to share my feelings about a product that I wholeheartedly believe in and was gobsmacked to find. I came away from Geneva believing it to be the best watch I'd seen all week, which is unfathomable. Unfathomable.
Wow, that's a statement.
It is. Because, you know, the truth of the matter is, okay, it isn't the best watch horologically, isn't the most stunning watch aesthetically, but it's the one that actually affected me the most. I don't know if I'm talking about relative affection, as in I really expected nothing and felt something, or whether I'm actually saying I genuinely felt much more about this watch than any other piece I saw, but I believe it to be the latter. Because I believe coming away, I was gobsmacked, I was enthralled by it. I wanted to go back and play with it again, and I wanted to wear it, and I could not wait to get one through the post. And it took a while because FedEx did FedEx things and wanted to know all sorts of nonsense about the watch, questions I couldn't answer. But I got it now, and I'm not looking forward to sending it back. I will send this one back because it's a press piece, and I have already registered my interest in purchasing one as and when that is possible. So yeah, it's a big yay from me. And I really am passionate about doing an episode like this because I think that it is worthwhile when you have quite a lot of experience in the industry as a maker, a journalist, as a collector, and you find something that really takes your breath away, something you never would have expected, something that should be shared with the community. It's important to go out there and say it. I've done this with all the brands that I like champion, like Schofield, Straum, Anodain, Laventure, and you know, now, amazingly, Polo Ralph Lauren. But hey, it's a big yay for me. And yeah, that's why, that's why, to answer your second question. Why? Because it deserves to be spoken about. Because it's special. It shouldn't be. I have no clue how it turned out so good, but it has done. And there you go. Next question, please.
Amazing. So, again, Rob mentioned it. This is not a sponsored episode. Rob actually went out and asked for the watch. Polo Ralph Lauren didn't approach us, did they?
Not this time, no. They contacted me for the initial meeting in Geneva.
Yes.
And I went along. And then after that, I've been chasing them. It flipped.
Exactly. So the real-time show didn't even exist back then. So that's off the table. I haven't had it in my hands. So whatever feedback I'm giving is literally by what I've seen online, like probably most of our listeners. So Rob, we received a zillion questions.
Well, I think I got 14 distinct questions. There was a few extras that came in that were overlaps. So I've compiled them, condensed them into one. Obviously, we have to be quite selective when it comes to a show like this, but we'll try and get through as many as we can.
Can I go first? That's maybe not polite, but can I go first?
You can ask me whatever you want about this watch.
Okay, so I had a myriad of thoughts and feelings when I saw the watch. And I personally love Ralph Lauren, Mr. Ralph Lauren, the brand Ralph Lauren, Polo Ralph Lauren. He has many labels. Today, I think it's a publicly listed company. I think he's still affiliated. I still wear his polos, and I've been doing so because I've been thinking about it. The first time I've seen one and got one was when I was 4 years old on one of my first trips to New York City. So I've been actually wearing them almost for 4 decades. So that's a disclaimer. I love the brand. Now, my initial reaction was also nay. Although I have a lot of respect for Ralph Lauren because he's a hardcore watch collector and cars collector. I believe back in 2007, they even started the Polo Ralph Lauren watch and jewelry company in a joint venture with Richemont, which I believe was 50-50. I don't know if that's the case today. Do you?
I believe they still have some Richemont movements, but I don't think that the companies are actually linked as closely as they were. But I might be wrong.
That's something interesting to research. Now, so as a brand, I love it. Their initial watches created together with Richemont were very high-end. They all used sister brand calibers, so IWC calibers, Piaget calibers, Jaeger LeCoultre calibers. I loved the new designs that they created back then. I believe they still exist in the collection. The slim lines, the square watches. Actually, Wyco, together with their Rake and Revolution, just launched a collab, limited edition, where they blended Roman numerals with Eastern Arabic numerals, which was actually very cool, I think. So I have a very high esteem of where they started. So this was interesting. It seems like a competitor for a Hamilton Khaki field watch, but it's more than double the price because I believe the retail price today is 2,460 euros, including VAT in our market. But when I started studying the watch, at first I'm like, why do you need to make a military mil-spec field watch? And why a bund strap? And I believe we got questions about that.
Yeah, we did.
But when I studied the pictures on a desktop instead of on my handheld device, so my mobile phone, I zoomed in very high res on the pictures. And the first thing I noticed, the case is different.
Mm-hmm.
It's not an off-the-shelf case, is it?
Oh, no, not at all. Not at all.
No, and talk about that, and the finishing seems different. It's not matte by a polishing machine where you can put a matte brush on it. It's not sandblasted. It's not sapphire bead blasted, it seems.
I'm very impressed.
So what is it, Rob? Talk about that, please. It looks a bit aluminum a bit. It looks white, the metal.
I am very impressed. You're absolutely right. It is none of those finishes, and I wouldn't expect you to be able to guess what it is because it's so unusual. Now, this case is absolutely unique to this particular watch. It has these little tiny stubby lugs, which to me somehow evoke stirrups. I don't know why. It has a bit of an Hermes look to the whole thing. The leather itself is very good quality, as you'd expect, but the case is made of stainless steel, but it is stamped. The whole case is stamped. It's pressed out. So that finish that you see on top there is actually machine burnishing. Nothing has been done to this case since it came out of the machine. It is crushed into shape.
Really?
and it stays like that. So you will notice this. Yeah, it's kind of like a sort of natural, almost mid patina. Hard to describe. It looks like you said like it's somewhere between like a bead blasted finish and a satin and a polish, and it has these elements where it looks worn but new, and that is why it's such an amazing success. But yes, really, that's how they did it. That's why it looks weird. And I mean, come on, what's not to like about that? A burnished case finish. And the cool thing is, I've got a press sample here, which has been around a few guys like me, I guess. It's got nicks all over it. It's not perfect. I don't know whether these nicks are even since manufacturing or came out of the machine like that, but it looks amazing. It looks like it's lived a life already. It looks like it's from 1967. Now, I have to just segue into a question here from one of my followers. Musty asked, I read on the homepage of Ralph Lauren, and I checked this, he was right, that this watch was inspired by Ralph's love of the watches from the 20s and the 30s. Why then is it called the Vintage 67? And he's absolutely right. Good question. I didn't know the answer, so I asked. And it's obvious now I know, but I didn't know before. 1967 was the year that the Polo Ralph Lauren brand was founded. So this is a callback to the very early days of the company. And I suppose the reason why they chose it, despite the watch's styling perhaps not being congruous with that era, was because to call it the Ralph Lauren 29 would have seemed disingenuous given the fact the brand didn't exist then. So they've gone as far back as they can in their history, and they've called it the Vintage 67, and they could call it whatever the hell they want. As far as I'm concerned, I'd still buy one.
Continuing on that topic, it seems, and I'm quite confident, the case is proprietary. It's designed by Ralph Lauren. It's made for Ralph Lauren. Because looking at the case back, it's also amazing because there is there are multiple layers on the backside even. Looking at the front again, it seems that the crown is designed
Yeah. It's a lovely crown.
It's a mix of a big pilot crown with a mushroom onion-ish crown, and it seems designed for them, so that's amazing. For our listeners, Rob, can we drop the reference number very quickly? Because I've gotten a lot of feedback the last few weeks that they immediately Google images while they're listening to us talking.
The only reference you need is Polo Ralph Lauren Vintage 67. It doesn't have a crazy long like Speedmaster-esque reference number at all. Just its name.
Okay, so we're looking at a cream whitish dial with black numerals, and then the numerals seem very Polo-esque.
Yep.
It seems they're designed. It's not an off-the-shelf font.
Nope.
Which I can appreciate very much. The seconds hand, the hand for the seconds on the subdial, the second subdial, seem unique to this watch.
Yeah. Everything's done okay, it's not made in-house. Obviously, it's like the manufacturing is outsourced, but the quality of it and the originality of it, that's all Polo Ralph Lauren doing that. Like, this is their typography, their design of hands, dial, case, even the strap. It's a bund strap, for goodness sake. So let me just slide in one of my other questions here. This comes from Christopher. He says, how is the strap? It looks like a hard edge. Well, I can say categorically that it isn't a hard edge. It's a beautifully made strap. The leather is supple and soft straight out of the box. The strap itself is a shade under 3 millimeters thick. It's 2.85 millimeters according to my measurements. And the bund portion of the strap, which is significantly thinner at 1.7 mil, sits very comfortably on the wrist, forms to the wrist perfectly straight out of the box. Like I say, you can't really fault it. It's a lovely color, and it's the kind of leather that you can do anything with, and it'll just look better and better and better. I wash my hands several times a day and often splash my leather straps because obviously not very skilled at washing my hands, and those kind of blemishes and stains just build up over time, and it just gets richer and deeper and even more attractive as time passes. So yeah, the strap is great. I hated bund straps about 2 months ago. Then I encountered this watch. I was taken by them, so I started trying them on other pieces, and now I wear my Breitling Aerospace on a bund. I don't know if you've seen that on my Instagram, Alon, but yeah, it's a weird combo, but it works.
I have seen it. Obviously, I see everything you do
Creepy.
on Instagram, and it Well, since we're buddies, I'm officially not a stalker,
Okay.
so I'm not creeping on your socials. All kidding aside, weirdly enough, the bund with your space works. Now, I received a question from Oliver, which links exactly to this topic. He sent in a question: why a bund strap? And can you tell us a bit about the history of the bund strap? Because there's a lot of love, but also hate for that strap.
Well, I'll tell you what. I'll take the first half of this question. You can take the second because it's I'm doing a lot of talking, and obviously I want to share the airwaves with you as much as possible. I'm just very enthusiastic about this watch. So, why a bund strap? Well, because it looks damn cool is the answer, Oliver. Thanks for your question, mate. I really appreciate it. You can remove the bund easy enough. The strap itself is actually quick release. So firstly, you can pull the tail end, the 6 o'clock end of the strap, out without any problem, and then you can just pop off the 12 o'clock side, and then you slide it out. So lug end of the strap first, so you don't pull the buckle through the bund. But it's easy enough to take that off. The watch changes its character entirely when you remove the bund pad. To be honest, I don't like it as much. That's just the truth. I like the incredibly vintage styling, and I mentioned my little Aspen Reverie earlier. I stand by it. That's what this watch is for. Like, it is the best weekend away with your very rich friends to a lake house kind of watch. It's a denim shirt and a Negroni in the afternoon kind of watch. It's a cool watch for relaxing. And the bund, although people love and hate them, it's incredibly comfortable whether you like it or not. And something I really failed to appreciate, I've never really been aware of leather cuffs. I think I might have been when I was 13 and going through a bit of a cowboy phase. But I love it. Yeah, I'm a convert. And I'm not saying I'm going to start wearing all my watches on buns, but I have actually been considering having some special buns made for other pieces. Like, for example, my Fortis Marine Master M40 in white. I've got it on the white rubber strap at the moment, and I am going to replace that with the Fortis bracelet because I've fallen in love with the micro adjustment on the clasp after my recent trip up to S Range, which you will have heard about already on the show in episodes 12 and 13. If not, go and check that out. Now, I am thinking about putting that on a bund because it kind of suits my Arctic Explorer vibe. So why a bund? Because it looks cool. And now, Alon, over to you for the history.
The most known story of the origins of a bund strap, and maybe the name gives it away because it's German, is it's been said that they've been designed originally by the German for German pilots during World War II, just before that, as a protective leather backing between the wrist and the watch, because in case they either get extremely hot or cold, it's uncomfortable. But if in case of fire and other things, the metal obviously will burn through your wrist. So that's the origin of the story. But I personally know that other armies also have used them, still use them. Today, some armies have complete sleeves over their watch so they don't create any shimmer or shining or reflection while on a mission. And I know even of modern day soldiers wearing these sleeves, these socks on their G-Shocks. So that's where the origins lie of that design. I guess in the 70s, both Steve McQueen and Paul Newman made them en vogue, trendy. And today, you'll see once in a while modern watches by modern watchmakers use them. One that pops to mind is the Tudor chronograph, Black Bay chronograph. The leather version comes on a bund, which is cool because you can always slide it off. So you can wear it as a regular leather strap or put it on. In modern day, there are a lot of people who are allergic to either non-precious metals or stainless steel, and especially the not high-end steel cases. So this is a perfect solution for them, because if the case back creates irritation on your wrist or a rash, it's also ideal to consider this strap. Anything to add, Rob?
No, I think you covered it very nicely. I mean, it's a fascinating history and one that some people get a lot of pleasure from knowing and continuing by wearing the bund strap on their wrist. I personally don't really give two shakes where it comes from. It's all about the aesthetic for me. Does it work or doesn't it work? And in this case, it very much works. So, do you have another question lined up for us?
Definitely. So Zach sent me a message. This caliber uses La Jouperet. So is La Jouperet considered high-end in comparison to Ita or Salita?
Okay, so let's, right from the top, I'll pull one of my questions in here. This is from Dan, another Fratello writer and a friend online. We've never actually met in real life, but I look forward to visiting him sometime when I get back to the Netherlands. You know him, right? You know Dan.
I see him at least once a month.
Oh, lovely. Is he part of Red Bar?
Anyways, Red Bar Amsterdam, and he visits my bodega once in a while.
Excellent stuff. Well, Dan has asked us, which movement did they use again? I'm guessing he knew. He was just dropping us an easy one there. But interestingly enough, there was some confusion on Instagram. My erstwhile colleague, Dave Sargent, jumped in with the answer that it was the D100. But actually, as he was corrected by one of my other followers momentarily after that, it is the Le Jouperet 7380. Now, these movements are similar, as in they're both manually wound and they are both 3 hertz, but they do have some significant differences. So aesthetically from the front, they look the same because they have a running second subdial at 6 o'clock. They have different dimensions, however. The D100 is much smaller because it's a Perso 7001 clone in the same way that the Nomos Alpha is an evolution of the Perso 7001. So it's smaller. It's only 23.3 millimeters across, 2.5 millimeters thick. The LJP 7380 that is in this watch is much bigger. It's 30 millimeters across and 2.7 millimeters thick. The most important difference, however, aside from the 21 joules in the 7380 versus the 17 joules in the D100, is the fact that the 7380 has a 90-hour power reserve, which is an increase of 40 hours over the D100, which, to be fair, is actually a very good power reserve for a Perso 7001 clone, which normally have around 41, 42-hour power reserves. So they've obviously done something to gear up that mainspring to get a little more juice out of it. So the LJP 7380 is the movement inside the Polo Ralph Lauren Vintage 67. In comparison to ETA or Salita, I do actually put Le Jouperet above them. Now, if I were to rank them in order of preference, Salita would definitely be locked into a third place. I think the way I would sort of say it is ETA is not the original movement manufacturer, but in this day and age, you could say, oh, it's the original and the best. It's the most reliable. It's the most ubiquitous. It's the easiest to service, perhaps the easiest to source parts for if you have an account or know somebody that does. Salita is just almost a direct clone of that, although they have dropped a lot of new chronograph complications recently, which are very interesting and very useful for smaller brands looking to diversify their offering. Now, Le Jouperet doesn't really clone ETA, but makes equivalents and finishes them to a higher standard, in my opinion, and also the power reserves tend to be better. Now, chances are they're a little finer, they could be a little finickier to work with, but at least they are generally available. For a new brand, if you're starting up and you're looking at ETA, Salita, or Le Jouperet as a potential supplier, I would say in the minds of most watch collectors, Le Jouperet carries a slight premium, and the fact that you might actually be able to place an order should make the decision an easy one. But I will always welcome new movement manufacturers to the game. It's always nice to have more options, and it's only a good thing for collectors.
Very technical. I love it. I hope our listeners didn't fall asleep.
Well, you know what? The assumption is that our listeners, you do this to me all the time, every time I get a little bit deep on the watchmaking side of things, and I was basically just rattling off some stats. Our listeners, we assume they're watch fanatics, and if not, they're budding watch fanatics, and they soon will be. And when they really buy into the passion that goes into these things and the description thereof, then my descriptions can be as long as they need to be to get everything out there. Right? Are you awake? Hello?
You are completely right, because I have now 2 buddies who were already affected by the watch bug, and they start listening to the podcast, not because I stalked them, but because they voluntarily decided to. And they are now, thanks to us, or we are to blame, so whatever side of the coin you want to choose, tumbling down the rabbit hole very fastly. So this is the shout out to Offa and Gabriel. And thank you, Dan, for your question and comment. Make sure to follow him on Instagram. It's Flip the Parrot. So it's at Flip the Parrot. He makes very cool pictures, and his handle is a referral to the fact that he shoots from a parrot on the shoulder angle. Hence his name. Do you want me to pick another question?
I want to ask you one, actually, because, I don't want it to be a robocracy. What do we call it? A rob-tatorship. Okay. Okay, this is from Jennifer. Perhaps Yennefer, who knows? Hi, Yennefer. Nice to have you with us. Do you compare Polo Ralph Lauren, to another fashion brand making watches like Hermes? She says. Now, actually, there's another question I can pull into this as well. This is, where has it gone? Okay. So from Tommy says, do you gents think fashion brands should make watches, or shouldn't they stick to making garments? We'll throw that one in there as well. And
okay, we'll blend those two.
And there was another one that I thought was pretty relevant. Okay, this is from Kieran. Yeah, Kieran in Manchester. Do you think that this is an overpriced fashion brand half-arsing another avenue, in brackets, like Tom Ford? Bitch, Kieran, you little bitch. Or do you feel like it's the early beginnings of a serious watch journey from another fashion brand? Oh, God, I'm regretting this. He's going on as long as I am. Serious, yeah, that's brilliant. Serious watch journey from another fashion brand, akin to stories of brands like Cartier or more recently Hermes. Okay, so right. So this is a good one for you, because you're a collector not just of watches but also of sneakers, so you do cross over into the fashion sphere as well. And it's a question of, should brands who are perhaps better known for making garments or accessories go into the watchmaking game? Is it legitimate? And what are your feelings on that subject?
Thank you, Tommy. Thank you, Jennifer. And thank you, Kieran's, for the awesome questions. Rob, to put you in your place, don't ever offend sneakerheads / soul collectors for calling us fashion victims, calling it fashion, or hype beasts, because OG sneaker collectors are OG. We don't follow trends or fashion. FYI.
Right, all right.
Like you are not a fashionable watch collector. So watch out for that. But I do appreciate...
Hang on a second. Okay, firstly, you're talking out your ass, right? You might think you're on some elevated plane, but it is fashion, and don't see fashion as a dirty word. There's nothing wrong with fashion. I didn't say that you were a hype beast. You said that, so it sounds like you got a chip on your shoulder. I collect baseball caps, right? So I'm in the same sort of like street culture sphere as you are, you sneakerheads that call yourselves that. But I'm not an idiot. I'm not saying that they're not like part of the fashion cycle. Of course they are. They may be a little bit outside of it, as you are with your sneakers, but come on,
do you have a New York Yankees felt wool fitted baseball cap? OG New Era without New Era on the side?
No, I don't have any Yankees caps on principle. It's the one I avoid it, because if you buy a Yankees cap if you don't know what you're doing, or if you're a Yankees fan, and I'm neither. I'm a Washington Nationals fan.
Or if you got one in the 80s, right? So I still have that OG one. It shrunk, unfortunately, so I'm keeping it for
that's
my
cool.
son.
Having a nice one.
But if you're wearing a camo New York Yankees cap made out of nylon,
go take a running jump. No, so little tip for anyone into caps, and then I'll shut up and go away. Go to Ebberts Field, Ebberts.com, Ebberts Field Flannels, Ebberts.com. That's EBBETS.com. They make the best wool caps. Now, unfortunately, they don't ship to Europe at the moment. They have done in the past. They may do again in the future. But if you want some good quality sportswear, that's where I get my headwear from. So I'll shut up now. I'll let you non-fashion loving sneakerheads go ahead with this question.
On topic of fashion, diving into this watch, my initial reaction was nay, and I went also to yay. The only discount I can apply to my liking of this watch is I regret the Polo being written that big on the dial. That's something I regret. So I do like looking from a helicopter view, dissecting the question, should fashion brands make watches, right? That question I answer with a clear yes. Everybody should make watches. What do we care who makes watches as long as they add new to it? New designs, new technology, new whatever. So, one of the first fashion brands ever to make watches, if I recollect correctly, is Gucci, under the signature of Severin, who also bought Cora and made it big. They did new stuff. They brought new designs to watchmaking, which was very cool. I think they lost themselves the last decade plus, but last year they actually launched a cool collection, I think. Now, the two haute couture brands that are doing it right and correct, I think, are Chanel and Hermes. Chanel invested not only in new designs. I mean, although Rado was making ceramic watches, Chanel made the J12, which was a very cool ceramic watch, and it's becoming a slow evergreen for them. But the Boyfriend is a cool watch, and etc. So they make cool watches. Hermes, being a leather maker and then king in silk, started also very early on, from day one, high end, and they stuck to it, buying 25% or investing 25% in the Vaucher manufacture caliber producer in Fleurier, which is owned 75% by Parmigiani Fleurier. Chanel did the same. They invested in Kenisi. They invested in FP Journe. They've invested in Bell & Ross. So you see that these guys are very serious about watchmaking. And Ralph Lauren did the same. As we discussed earlier on in 2007, they, off the bat, started making watches. Ralph Lauren started making watches off the bat in 2007, I believe, by setting up the Ralph Lauren Watches and Jewelry Company in a joint venture with Richemont. And they still make high-end watches. Does that mean I think that every watchmaker, every fashion brand should become a watchmaker? No. Should they make watches? Yeah. Should they all be high-end? No, I don't think so. Let's take Armani, for example. Their Emporio Armani line was mass volume, made with Fossil Group. Always. They never made high-end watches. And that begs the question, what should fashion brands do when they make watches? Should they consider it an accessory, and should it be at the bottom price range of their collection? So should they consider it like sunglasses, 100, 200, 300 euros, and therefore the watches as well? Whereas the handbags are 2,000, or their clothing are very expensive. For Chanel and Hermes, it makes sense because they are the best in what they do. Bags, leather, silk, and even clothing. So it makes sense for them to make high-end watches, but that makes their life difficult because they are competing with the big boys. Does Hermes' strategy work? I think so. In one of the earlier episodes, or one of our first Q&A episodes, we discussed the GPHG extensively, and Hermes took not one but two prizes for the same watch. So that says a lot, I think. Coming back to Ralph Lauren. So what I find confusing, like a lot of fashion houses, Ralph Lauren has many labels. Their pinnacle label, I believe, is called the Purple Label or Black Label. I'm a bit confused. And then you have the Ralph Lauren, and you have RL, and you have X something, which is a sport label. And Polo, I think, is the volume label within the umbrella of Ralph Lauren brands. Now, probably everybody owns or once owned a Polo t-shirt with a Polo player on a horse embroidered on his chest, or a Oxford dress shirt, a button-down shirt. I believe that is considered luxury, I guess the best polo t-shirt maker is Lacoste, which also make watches, but they have decided to make it fashion, so high volume, 100, 200, 300 euros. Are there more expensive polo t-shirts out there? Probably. Taking that analogy and philosophy to watchmaking, do I think it's a good thing that Polo Ralph Lauren made more accessible pricing compared to their high-end watchmaking, the 10K plus range? We did a research. This watch is in euros 2,460, but in the US it's $2,700 US dollars, if I'm correct. That is still high. It puts you amidst a Longines, a very well-made Longines. It puts you next to a Tudor, a Tag Heuer. And that's fierce competition for Polo Ralph Lauren. So I guess, who are they targeting? Either very hardcore Polo Ralph Lauren fans, either people who love fashion, or those watch collectors that already own a Tudor, that own a Tag Heuer, that own a Breitling, that own a Longines, and want something different. What do you think, Rob?
Well, I think you answered that question absolutely brilliantly. I loved your rather defiant statement. Why shouldn't fashion brands make watches? What do we care who makes watches as long as they add something to the conversation? I think that's a brilliant perspective to have, and you put that very nicely. So thanks for that. I have no issue whatsoever. I agree with you entirely. Like referencing Gucci and the important work that Gucci did in the past, as well as Fossil and Guess and all these brands that actually contributed in some tangible way to the revival of the watchmaking industry in the 80s after almost seeing it brought to its knees by the quartz revolution of the 70s is a really, really wise thing to do. I think that we should be more aware of that, and we should realize that we're part of a massive ecosystem that is a broad church and accepts all comers. And if you like something, go ahead and buy it and wear it and enjoy it. You know, there's no place on the real-time show for snobbishness. You know, if you have a collection, a humble collection of fashion watches, and you absolutely love them and you want to wear them and nothing else, and you aren't attracted to high-end horology in the traditional sense, then more power to you. So that's a good thing. And I think that you probably nailed it with the type of customer this watch would appeal to, because you almost described me. I have most of those watches, and not exactly those, but, you know, I have a wide selection of watches in my collection, and I don't have anything like this. And I bought it simply because I think it is an excellent product. I think it's an excellent watch. It's made in a different way. It has this unique stone wash finish, is what Nacho from Fratello referred to it as, and he asks us what we think about it. Do you like it? Do you like this burnishing?
I do. I love it.
Yeah, me too. And it's unlike anything else. You know, so I'm really, 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 really particular in a very amusing way, by the way. If you could see me behind closed doors, how I fawn over my watch collection and arrange things in boxes before I put them in the safe or in the bank, you would laugh at me because it's obsessive. I actually have like a note or several notes on my phone where I organize and reorganize my watch collection across different boxes so that each box is full of watches of the same type or the same brand or the same style. And there's no end to this. There's no final conclusion as to how these watches should be presented, because the collection itself is always shifting and changing. I'm buying and I'm selling and I'm trading and I'm giving away watches all the time. I'm not being given them as much as I'd like to be, but, you know, that part of the equation could maybe change in a month or two. It's Christmas coming up. Hint, hint, darling, if you're listening. Yeah,
Fran, I'll send you a hint.
Yeah,
He wants a Polo Ralph Lauren watch, sweetheart.
I'll send her the invoice. I'm sure Ralph Lauren's about to send me one. Not himself, although, God, I'd love to get Ralph Lauren on the show. Unfortunately, he doesn't do podcast interviews very often because the company, as you rightly said, is listed. So it's a bit tricky with their communications, actually. Yeah, I love it. I don't take anything away from it for being Ralph Lauren. In fact, I kind of like it because it's such an unexpected treat. And you mentioned that the logo was a bit big for you. I mean, everything on this watch is weirdly big. It's actually a 40mm case, which some people have commented that it may seem a little large for the style, but because it is inspired by pocket watches or trench watches, I don't think that really is something I would say myself. I like the big logo. I think it's cool as hell. Everything looks like it's inflated, like swollen, like leaping out of the dial. Those numbers included, they're pad printed, but they're so deliciously pad printed. The gloss paint that has been applied here to the dial is domed. There's so much of it. It's absolutely divine. And talking of those numbers, there's a question that came in from good old Lee. He's come up once or twice before. The Great Escapement on Instagram. What a great handle that is, the Great Escapement. He says, why do they feel the need to cut the numerals in half with the small seconds track? Also, why does Longines feel the need to do this on multiple models? I'll let you
Good
answer
question.
this one, actually. What do you think about it?
So the world is divided in two schools on topic of cutting off numbers, yes or no. And I think you can even carve it literally through half. I'm in the school of not cutting them off. It annoys the OCD in me like crazy. But they don't have a choice. So on topic of the 40 millimeters, Rob, I don't mind the big case because the first thing I always look at, how far is the axis of the sub-second dial off the bezel of the case at the bottom. And it works here. They could have gone for 38. They would have not cut off the 6 numeral, a bit of the 7 and 5, but maybe they could have filled it up. But they went for big. It works. I think it's fine. Now, thank you for that question, because every watch designer I speak to I ask what was the biggest problem in the design process, and 99% of the time, internal discussions on prototypes they spend most of the time, should or shouldn't we cut off numbers? And often their answer is, we had to because we didn't know how to fill up that empty space. Some watch producers solve that problem by not doing a full round of numbers. So going from 1 to 12, right? So they skip. They do 2, 12, 2, 4, 8, and 10. That's a way to solve it. So they mix numbers with indices, or you do just indices. But it's a big problem. I don't know how the Polo Ralph Lauren team could have solved this. So I accept their design. Who am I, right, to accept this? I'm just a stupid retailer / wannabe podcast host. But yeah, it's a big discussion. They could have made the sub-seconds dial bigger, but actually they couldn't because it's already touching the main axis of the minute and hour hands. So I don't see any other solution. Is only by shrinking the case. What do you think, Rob?
I think there's room for all kinds of design decisions in the watchmaking industry. I don't think there should be a rule about this particular topic. In this instance, it doesn't bother me at all, perhaps because it's been done so full-bloodedly. There is no mercy. That 6 has been fully decapitated. In fact, it's been chopped right down to the waist. I think that the
it's not the waist till its ankles.
Yeah, right. Okay, there's not much of him left. I think that the precision of it is what really charms me. Like the elegance with which it cuts through the 7, and particularly the back of that 5, which is probably the most ornate of the Arabic numerals on this dial. It's just neat and just well done. Just very deliberate and very decisive. And, you know, with these big numerals, obviously, if you want a sub-seconds dial, you leave yourself absolutely no alternative but to cut through them. And I mean, I adore the aesthetic of the watch. So obviously, I disagree with the Great Escapement here. Unfortunately, I would stick with it exactly. And talking of the 40 millimeters, so you made a very good point, actually, something that I'd failed to really appreciate about the axis of the sub-second. So this is one of the biggest differences between the D100 and the LJP 7380, and that is the position of the sub-seconds. Now, what that means is the ideal placement of that axis I would say, is directly between the center of the dial and the edge of the dial. And on this 40mm case with, let me just grab my vernier gauge, at a 33.5mm dial, ballpark, because that's the box crystal edge to edge, it fits perfectly. It's slap bang, as far as I can see, as far as the eye would allow me to believe, between the center of the dial and the edge of the case. And that is very satisfying to look at. If you had gone down to 38, you would be in a situation where the sub-seconds dial is perhaps, if it were the same size, that is, rubbing up against the edge of the case, it would look a little bit low. I mean, there is a comment, our beloved brand Nomos Glaciter, that the 38mm alpha-powered watches, which have the same manual caliber in them as the 35s and the 33s, have a slight problem with the subdial floating a little too high away from the edge of the inner bezel. Now, our first collaboration together, the dish style,
we solved that problem perfectly, if I may say so.
We did solve that problem perfectly through the fortune of the design that we were working with, because we created a visual trick to kind of like fill that gap effectively, or like draw people's attention away from it. But
exactly,
most 38mm Orions especially don't have that in their locker. Perfectly justified with that analysis why the case size should be 40mm. So I think they got it bang on.
On top of the Nomos discussion, and that's a big discussion within Nomos, and we had that many times, filling that gap with a date on paper, idea looks good, but it doesn't work for me. So we always opt as much as possible also for our next collab that's in the works with Nomos, without date.
Yeah, I agree. I always could do without the date really on the Nomos watch, and I could normally do without a date on any watch really. I tell you, the one Nomos watch, we're slightly off topic here, but we love Nomos. One Nomos watch I really, really love the date on, that's the new updates with the DUW 6101 caliber, the peripheral date around the outside with the little coloured lozenges. You can get it in, blue and green on the Tangenta, white and red on the Metro, white and red on the Tangenta. That's a nice, nice complication. I'd like to see more of that. All right, so let's go and have a look at the questions. We've got a couple more here. Question from Mark. Did Mr. Ralph Lauren design his watches? I actually asked this question myself. He is involved in the design process. He doesn't sit down and draw them from start to finish, but he certainly makes selections when he is presented with ideas and concepts, and he often is the one to provide the genesis of a concept. So he is involved, actually. He's very active still in the business. He's an incredibly sprightly man, considering his advancing years. And, he looks cool as hell, right? He's an icon.
So, Rob, Gareth sent in a nice question.
Oh, Gareth. Oh, it's heartbreaking. I don't know if you know this, but I was in the Arctic with Fortis recently, and I was doing some drone photography, and the drone malfunctioned, and I lost control of it, and it crashed into a tree, and I lost it in the Arctic wilderness. So luckily I had it insured. You still have to pay a €700 fee to get a new one sent out to you, but I named him Gareth. After I'd lost him, he didn't have a name before I lost him, but then I wanted to humanize his demise, so I called him Gareth. And now every time somebody mentions Gareth, I'm like, Gareth the drone, he's lost in the Arctic Circle. Oh, no.
So he's kidding around, guys, but listen to episode 12, because I'm quite jealous.
Kidding. It's true. Gareth is dead.
Go sit in a corner and cry. I'll tell our listeners what you've done in the Arctic, because that's rather awesome. So episode 12, unfortunately, I'm not on it because I'm jealous. Rob went with Fortis to shoot watches with a rocket into space. So I highly recommend to listen to episode 12. So Garrett, not your drone, is asking...
No, from beyond the grave.
He lives in the metaverse right now. Garrett asks... Did you ever imagine you would fall in love with a Ralph Lauren watch?
No, never. Not in a million years. I think this is a nice one to bring the show to a gentle close with maybe one more question to come, because this calls back to the first question at the top of the show. No, I never expected it. I never saw it coming. I very glibly took the meeting with Guillaume, not expecting anything. I was really there courtesy to my colleague Chloe, and I thought, yeah, well, what are Ralph Lauren going to show me? And what an arrogant fool I was shown to be, because I was really shown that there's so much to know and so much to discover and so much more to enjoy in this industry. And after my eye-opening week with Fortis in the Arctic, surrounded by amazing minds and talents from all over the world, I've been really exposed to things I never thought I'd get the chance to be exposed to. So I'm having a bit of a week of it. Like there's just so much out there. And whenever somebody who has such a passion for watch collecting as I do discovers something like this, it is absolutely imperative it's shared with the whole watch world. And we got a lot more listeners now than we did when episode 1 came out. So it's starting to build into something very real. And thank you to everybody who has got involved and sent us questions in. I think we have one more in the bank, right, Alon?
One last one from our dear listeners. Richard B. Tyrell, I guess that's his handle, sent in a question. If the Polo 67 was an international football team, which team would it be and why? Rob.
Okay, so just full disclosure to our listeners, we are recording this on December 8th. It is a Thursday. It is the second of 2 rest days between the last 16 and the quarter-final stages. So we have 8 teams left in the World Cup, and Richard asks us to select from those countries still in the World Cup. So we have 8 to choose from. Off the top of my head, that's the Netherlands, Argentina, Croatia, Brazil, England, France, Portugal, and Morocco. And this could have been a very difficult question, which might have taken a little bit of massaging to make sense, had it not been for Morocco's shock victory in penalties over Spain, winning 3-0 in the shootout. Because the Morocco team, I have a bit of a soft spot for him. I had a soft spot for him from the start of the World Cup because I have been to Morocco and climbed Toubkal and have a very close feeling for the people and for the culture there. And so they were my second team right from the get-go. I had England at number 1, obviously, and then I had Morocco. And I can't believe they've done as well as they have. They topped their group, which everyone thought was a complete fluke. And then they beat Spain, which everyone's saying is a complete fluke. And now they're about to face Portugal. Now, by the time this episode airs, the World Cup will, I think, be over. So Morocco could be world champions, or they could have been dumped out by the Portuguese at the quarterfinal stage. But the reason why my answer is Morocco, quite simply, is that nobody saw them coming. Nobody saw this watch coming. Nobody expected anything from it. It has delivered at every level that I could possibly ask it to. And, the leather's really nice. And, Morocco's famed for its fine textiles. So there you go. That's my answer, Morocco. And more success to that team.
Well said. And Zahbis, I hope you've won. Rob, one last one, a personal question of mine. So I've gone through the Polo lineup, and I'm happy to see that my favorite watch is still in the collection, which is the 867 collection. That's that square collection I was talking about that did a collab with the Rake/Revolution. I see that they still make a lot of watches from the Richemont joint venture era. By the way, for ladies, check out the stirrup. Very elegant, very unique design. And what I love to see that it all really resonates with the Ralph Lauren brand identity, but also Mr. Ralph Lauren's identity. I would never wear the American Western collection, but I very, very, very much appreciate, especially the cushion-shaped 42 sterling silver watch. Now, Rob, looking at that lineup, is the 67 hands down your favorite in the whole collection?
Yes, absolutely. Absolutely, 100%. It is my favorite. It is the only Ralph Lauren watch that I've ever considered buying, the only one I will buy for the foreseeable future. Although I must say, funnily enough, I did have a soft spot for the stirrup myself. That was probably my favorite Ralph Lauren watch before the Vintage 67 hit the market, just because it's so Ralph, Yeah.
And different and new. Yeah. But looking at the whole collection, what I love is every watch is unique. They literally put their soul into it. and they didn't copy any other brand, which I think is very cool.
Yeah, I mean, this is a very similar parallel to what Hermes have been doing, I think, and why both brands deserve a bit more respect than certainly Ralph Lauren gets in this sphere. That's because they are taking a fashion-first approach to high-end watchmaking, and that's a legitimate route to creating something new. So I would not say every watch in the collection is unique. I mean, like the sort of polo watches with the green bezels and brown bezels, the cases are quite derivative.
But the logo
makes it unique. You're absolutely right. And the big teddy bears on the what could otherwise be like a Shinola kind of style watch, also unique. And the horse riding thing and the leather, and you really feel the culture of the brand. So very successful ambassadors on the wrist, I think, all across the board. Some standout models for me.
I do think that the Bears collection, they don't have a particular name, but the lugs of that watch and having the crown at the 2 o'clock position makes it a unique design.
Yeah, well, the lugs, I mean, it's a bit of everything in it. The lugs do remind me of Hermes as well. Yeah, which is fine, because those two brands, they should stand side by side. And if Ralph Lauren wants to do more in the vein of the Vintage 67, which I'm not sure the brand really does, I'm not really sure that this is like a warning shot fired to all of the fashion brands that Ralph Lauren's about to take the luxury watch industry by storm. I don't think that that's really what we're seeing. I think that we're just seeing an exceptional one-off. And oftentimes I find myself attracted to watches that have a great deal of context within the watchmaking industry. And this one is a bit of an outlier. It exists on an island at the moment, and it may remain there. I'm not sure if the brand will follow up with anything new, and I'm not sure I need them to for once.
No, it's a well-rounded collection. So to round up this episode, I have 2 questions. If you made it till the end of this episode, we would love to know if you want us to do more of these review episodes where we discuss watches we've worn and tried. I enjoyed this episode. I hope you do too. And second thing, I've gotten some questions from people that want to receive our TRTS sticker, especially the Dutch, because Rob, I don't know if you knew, and I didn't realize that when we made that abbreviation, there's one letter missing, which is the O, and in Dutch, TROTS means proud, trots. So,
you know what I was thinking of doing? I had this idea the other day because you told me this off air about a week or 2 ago, and I was thinking of putting a small clock, like a circular clock, in the middle of the hour and T, and then redoing the logo in a rainbow color. I thought that would be a nice play on words for us, and
that's cool. And I'm looking at the sticker at the back of my phone. Since the sticker is round, that is an O. So for all our Dutchies, if you want a sticker, we'll send it to you free of charge. Just drop us a DM.
Yeah, we'll send you a few to make it worth the postage, so you can sticker up your local neck of the woods, wherever it is. A load of my mates, when they came around to my office when we just started recording, they saw a bunch of these stickers lying around, and they all grabbed handfuls and then dissipated around the world and stuck them all over the place. So there's stickers in Sweden, North America, Budapest already. It's Amsterdam. It's growing. It's going crazy. So yeah, encourage graffiti. That's what I say.
Especially on your laptop and your mobile phone. Rob, thank you so much.
Yeah, that was a real pleasure. It was nice to pioneer this new format. I think personally it's gone pretty damn well because subject matter is so interesting, at least to us. If you would like to get involved with the show, of course, you can ask us your questions. It doesn't have to be about a product. It can be about anything to do with watchmaking. We want to know what you want to know about our industry. So you can contact us either on Instagram. I'm there at RobNuds. That's ROBNUDDS. Alon, you can find at ALONBENJOSEPH, or you can send either of us a direct email at either rob@therealtime.show or alon@therealtime.show. Thanks for joining us. We'll be back on Thursday with a very special guest calling in all the way from Gothenburg in Sweden. That's James Thompson, otherwise known as the Black Badger, co-owner of Arcanaut and materials maestro known around the industry for his work with major brands such as MB&F, MW & Co., David Toon, and others. Until then, stay safe and keep on ticking.